The morning air was crisp and cool as Anna carefully smoothed her white wedding dress one last time. She had spent weeks making this dress by hand, stitching every tiny bead and adjusting every fold until it was perfect. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. After 3 long years of waiting, she would finally marry the man she loved. Anna looked at herself in the small mirror, hanging on the wall of her tiny room above the general store. Her blonde hair was pinned up with small white flowers she had picked at sunrise. Her blue eyes sparkled with excitement, though there was a hint of nervousness too. She had been up since 4 in the morning, unable to sleep from all the butterflies dancing in her stomach. The small frontier town was already buzzing with activity. People were walking toward the little wooden church at the end of the main street. Anna could hear children laughing and women chatting as they passed by her window. Everyone in town knew about the wedding. It was the biggest event they had seen in months. Anna's hands shook slightly as she picked up the letter that had arrived just 2 days ago. It was from William, her husband-to-be, written in his familiar handwriting. He promised he would be there on time, no matter what. He had been away for almost 6 months, working in the big cities back east to earn money for their future together. The letter said he was coming home with enough money to buy land and build them a proper house. She had waited for him before. William was always traveling for work, always promising to come back soon, but this time was different. This time he had given her his word that nothing would keep him away from their wedding day. Anna trusted him completely. She loved him with all her heart and believed every word he said. The church bells started ringing at 9 o'clock, calling everyone to the ceremony. Anna's friend Mary knocked on her door, ready to help her walk to the church. Mary had been Anna's closest friend since childhood, and she was supposed to be the only bridesmaid at the wedding. "You look absolutely beautiful," Mary said with a big smile. "William is going to be so happy when he sees you." Anna blushed and picked up her small bouquet of wildflowers. Together they walked slowly toward the church. The whole town seemed to be there, waiting and watching. Anna's heart was beating so fast, she thought. Everyone could hear it. The church was decorated exactly the way Anna had imagined. White ribbons hung from the wooden pews and more wildflowers were arranged near the altar. The preacher stood at the front, holding his Bible and smiling warmly at Anna as she entered. Everything was perfect except for one thing. William was nowhere to be seen. Anna waited at the back of the church, expecting to see William walk through the door any moment. Maybe he was just running a little late. The stagecoach from the east sometimes arrived behind schedule. She kept looking toward the entrance, her smile never fading. Even as minutes turned into an hour, the people in the church began to whisper among themselves. Some turned around in their seats to look at Anna with worried expressions. Others checked their pocket watches and shook their heads. The preacher cleared his throat several times and suggested they wait a little longer. Anna's friend, Mary, squeezed her hand and whispered encouraging words. "He'll be here soon," she said. "You know how William is always getting caught up in business. He probably just lost track of time." But as the second hour passed, Anna's confidence began to crack. Her smile felt forced now, and her hands were trembling. The wildflowers in her bouquet were starting to wilt in the warm church air. Children were getting restless, and their parents were beginning to leave. Just as Anna was about to suggest they cancel the ceremony, a man on horseback rode up to the church. Everyone turned to look, hoping it was William finally arriving. Instead, it was Jake, the mail carrier, holding an envelope in his hand. "This just came in on the morning stage," Jake announced loudly. "It's addressed to Miss Anna, urgent delivery." Anna's heart sank as she recognized William's handwriting on the envelope. With shaking hands, she tore it open and read the words that would change her life forever. The letter was short and cruel in its simplicity. William had married someone else, a banker's daughter in Philadelphia. He wrote that he was sorry, but he had found better opportunities in the East and wouldn't be coming back to the frontier. He hoped Anna would understand and find happiness with someone else. The words hit Anna like a physical blow. She felt dizzy and had to grab Mary's arm to keep from falling. The church fell completely silent as everyone watched her face turn pale. Some of the women gasped when they realized what had happened. Anna folded the letter carefully and put it in her pocket. She looked around at all the faces staring at her with pity and shock. These were people she had known her whole life, people who had watched her grow up and fall in love. Now they were all witnesses to her humiliation. "The wedding is cancelled," Anna announced in a voice that was surprisingly steady. "Thank you all for coming." She turned and walked out of the church with her head held high, even though inside she felt like her world was falling apart. Mary followed her, trying to offer comfort, but Anna barely heard her friend's words. All she could think about was how foolish she had been to trust William's promises. The rest of the day passed in a blur of concerned neighbors, pitying looks, and well-meaning advice. Everyone wanted to tell Anna that she was better off without William, that he wasn't worth her tears. But their words only made her feel worse. She had given William 3 years of her life, turning down other suitors and dreaming of their future together. As evening approached, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. The wind picked up, rattling the windows of Anna's small room. She sat on her bed, still wearing her wedding dress, staring at the storm clouds rolling in. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and she could smell rain in the air. Anna made a decision that surprised even herself. She couldn't stay in this town where everyone knew about her shame. She couldn't face the whispers and pitying glances that would follow her everywhere she went. She had to leave, and she had to leave tonight. She changed out of her wedding dress and put on her traveling clothes, a simple brown dress, sturdy boots, and a warm coat. She packed a small bag with her few precious belongings and what little money she had saved. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Anna wrote a short note to Mary, thanking her for being such a good friend. The storm was getting stronger as Anna stepped outside. Lightning flashed across the sky, and the wind whipped her hair around her face. She pulled her coat tight and started walking toward the edge of town, toward the vast wilderness that stretched beyond the settled lands. She didn't know where she was going or what she would do. All she knew was that she had to get away from this place and these people who had witnessed her humiliation. The storm seemed to match her mood perfectly, wild, angry, and unpredictable. As Anna disappeared into the darkness and rain, she made a promise to herself. She would never again trust someone so completely that they could break her heart like this. She would never again be so naive about love and promises. Whatever happened to her out there in the wilderness, it couldn't be worse than the pain she felt right now. The last light from the town faded behind her as Anna walked into the storm, leaving her old life behind forever. Anna had been walking for 3 days straight through the endless prairie. Her feet were covered in blisters and her water supply had run out yesterday morning. The sun beat down mercilessly during the day, and at night the temperature dropped so low that she shivered uncontrollably despite her coat. She had no idea where she was going. All she knew was that she wanted to get as far away from her old life as possible. The rolling hills of grass seemed to stretch on forever in every direction. Sometimes she would climb to the top of a hill, hoping to see some sign of civilization, but there was nothing except more grass and sky. On the first day, Anna had felt strong and determined. The anger at William's betrayal had fueled her steps, and she had walked with purpose. But now, 3 days later, that anger was fading into something much worse, despair. Her stomach cramped with hunger, and her lips were cracked from thirst. The worst part was the loneliness. Anna had never been truly alone before. Even when William was away, she had Mary and the other townspeople around her. Now there was nothing but silence, broken only by the wind blowing through the grass and the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. As the third evening approached, Anna noticed dark clouds building on the horizon again. Her heart sank. Another storm was coming, and she had nowhere to take shelter. The prairie offered no trees, no caves, no buildings, just endless open space where she would be completely exposed to whatever nature threw at her. The wind began to pick up, bending the tall grass in waves that looked almost like an ocean. Anna pulled her coat tighter and tried to walk faster, but her legs felt like they were made of lead. She hadn't eaten anything except a few berries she had found yesterday, and even those had made her stomach sick. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Anna could see lightning flashing inside the dark clouds. The storm was moving fast, much faster than she could walk. Within minutes, the first fat raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a steady downpour. Anna stumbled forward, trying to find any kind of shelter, but there was nothing. The rain soaked through her coat and dress, making them heavy and cold against her skin. Her hair stuck to her face, and water ran into her eyes, making it hard to see where she was going. The lightning was getting closer now, and the thunder was so loud it seemed to shake the ground beneath her feet. Anna had never been so scared in her life. She had heard stories of people being struck by lightning out on the open prairie, and she knew she was in terrible danger. As she stumbled through the storm, Anna's foot caught in a hole hidden by the tall grass. She fell hard, twisting her ankle and scraping her hands on the rough ground. Pain shot up her leg as she tried to stand, but she couldn't put any weight on her injured foot. Anna crawled toward what looked like a small depression in the ground near a creek. It wasn't much shelter, but it was better than being completely in the open. She curled up in a ball, trying to protect herself from the wind and rain, but it was no use. The storm was too powerful. The cold was the worst part. Anna's wet clothes seemed to suck all the warmth from her body, and she couldn't stop shaking. Her teeth chattered so hard she was afraid she might bite her tongue. She had never felt so miserable and hopeless in her entire life. As the hours passed, Anna began to feel drowsy despite the storm. She knew this was a bad sign. She had heard that people who were freezing to death often felt warm and sleepy right before the end. She tried to stay awake, but her eyelids felt impossibly heavy through the rain and wind. Anna thought she heard something, the sound of hoofbeats, but that was impossible. She was miles from anywhere, and no one would be crazy enough to ride out in weather like this. It had to be her imagination, or maybe the thunder playing tricks on her ears, but the sound was getting closer. Anna forced herself to lift her head and peer through the rain. There, barely visible through the storm, was a figure on horseback. At first, she thought it might be a ghost or a hallucination brought on by her fever and exhaustion. The rider was tall and wore dark clothing that seemed to blend with the storm. His horse was a beautiful paint with patches of brown and white, and it moved through the rough weather like it was used to such conditions. The man sat straight in his saddle, completely comfortable despite the wind and rain. As he got closer, Anna could see that he wasn't like anyone from her town. His skin was bronze-colored, and his long black hair was braided with feathers and beads. He was Native American, probably Sioux, based on the stories she had heard from traders and travelers. Anna's heart began to race, but not from fear. She was too exhausted and desperate to be afraid. If this man wanted to hurt her, there was nothing she could do about it anyway. She was completely helpless. The rider pulled his horse to a stop near where Anna lay huddled by the creek. He looked down at her for a long moment, studying her with dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Anna tried to speak, to ask for help, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Without saying a word, the man dismounted from his horse. He was even taller than Anna had thought, with broad shoulders and strong arms. But there was something gentle about the way he moved as he knelt down beside her. He spoke to her in a language she didn't understand, but his voice was kind and reassuring. When Anna didn't respond, he switched to broken English with a heavy accent. "You hurt," he said, more as a statement than a question. "You come from settlement?" Anna nodded weakly. The man, she could see now that he was probably around 30 years old, looked at her torn dress and battered appearance. He seemed to understand that she was running from something, not just lost. "I take you safe place," he said. "My people." Help. Anna wanted to protest, to say that she didn't need help, but she couldn't form the words. The man gently lifted her onto his horse, then climbed up behind her. Anna had never been so close to a Native American before, and she was surprised by how normal he seemed, just a person trying to help another person in trouble. The ride through the storm was like a dream. Anna felt safe for the first time in days, protected by the stranger's strong arms and his horse's steady gait. She must have fallen asleep, because the next thing she knew, they were approaching a village of teepees arranged in a circle. Even through the rain, Anna could see people coming out to meet them. Women and children watched curiously as the man carried her toward one of the larger teepees. An elderly woman with kind eyes and gray hair braided with silver ornaments came forward, speaking rapidly in the native language. The man who had rescued her, Anna still didn't know his name, explained something to the older woman. She nodded and gestured for them to bring Anna inside the warm, dry teepee. Anna's last clear memory of that night was being helped out of her wet clothes and wrapped in soft buffalo robes. The elderly woman gave her something warm to drink that tasted of herbs and honey. For the first time in days, Anna felt truly safe. As she drifted off to sleep, Anna realized that the man who had saved her life was named Gray Eagle. She had heard him say it when he spoke to the other people in the village. Gray Eagle, a Sioux warrior who had risked his own safety to rescue a complete stranger in the middle of a deadly storm. Anna didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or whether these people would let her stay. All she knew was that she was alive. And that was more than she had dared to hope for just a few hours ago. Anna woke up to the sound of children laughing outside the teepee. For a moment she forgot where she was and expected to see her small room above the general store. Instead, she found herself lying on soft buffalo robes inside a warm, cozy space that smelled of sage and wood smoke. The elderly woman who had cared for her the night before was sitting nearby, working on a piece of beadwork. Her fingers moved quickly and skillfully, creating beautiful patterns with tiny colored beads. When she noticed Anna was awake, she smiled warmly and said something in her native language. Anna tried to sit up, but her body ached all over. The woman gently pushed her back down and brought her a bowl of something that looked like soup. It was made with meat and vegetables Anna didn't recognize, but it tasted wonderful. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. "My name is Gentle Rain," the woman said in careful English. "You sleep 2 days. Very sick." Anna was surprised to learn she had been unconscious for so long. No wonder she felt so weak. "Thank you for taking care of me," she whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if Gray Eagle hadn't found me." Gentle Rain nodded and continued. Her beadwork. "Gray Eagle, good man. He bring you here because spirits tell him to help. You have strong medicine. You survived storm that would kill many people." Over the next few days, Anna slowly recovered her strength. Gentle Rain brought her food and medicine made from herbs and roots. Other women from the tribe would stop by to check on her, speaking in their own language but always with kind expressions and gentle touches. Anna was fascinated by everything she saw. The teepee was much more comfortable than she had expected, with intricate decorations and carefully organized spaces for different activities. The women wore beautiful dresses made of soft leather, decorated with beads and quillwork in amazing patterns. As Anna got stronger, she began to venture outside the teepee. The village was bigger than it had seemed that first stormy night. There were about 30 teepees arranged in a circle, with a large fire pit in the center where people gathered to cook and talk. Children ran around playing games, their laughter filling the air. Anna watched them with wonder. They seemed so free and happy, nothing like the strictly controlled children from her hometown. They played with simple toys made from sticks and stones, but they looked like they were having more fun than any child she had ever seen. The men of the tribe were impressive too. They were tall and strong, with an air of quiet confidence that Anna found remarkable. They seemed to move with purpose, whether they were working with horses, making weapons, or sitting around the fire talking about hunting and tribal matters. Gray Eagle would visit Anna every day to check on her recovery. At first, their conversations were simple because of the language barrier. But Anna was a quick learner, and she began picking up Sioux words and phrases. Gray Eagle was patient with her attempts to speak his language, and his English improved. As they spent more time together, "Why did you help me?" Anna asked him one afternoon as they sat outside Gentle Rain's teepee. "Your people and my people, we don't usually get along." Gray Eagle was quiet for a long moment, watching the children play. "I see you in storm," he finally said. "You not run from danger, you run from pain. Same pain I know when my wife die. 3 winters ago," Anna felt her heart skip. She hadn't known Gray Eagle was a widower. "I'm sorry," she said softly. What was her name? Morning Star, Gray Eagle replied. She died bringing our baby. Both gone same day. His voice was steady, but Anna could see the sadness in his dark eyes. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who had both lost everything they thought mattered. Anna realized that pain was the same, no matter what color your skin was or what language you spoke. As weeks passed, Anna began to help with daily tasks around the village. At first, the other women were unsure what to do with her. She didn't know how to tan hides, gather the right plants for medicine, or cook the foods they ate. But Anna was determined to learn. Gentle Rain became her teacher, showing her how to work with leather and beads. Anna's first attempts were clumsy and uneven, but she kept trying. The other women began to warm up to her when they saw how hard she was working to fit in. You have good hands for this work, said Flying Bird, a young woman about Anna's age. My grandmother says your spirit is strong. You will learn our ways. Anna felt proud of this compliment. In her old life, she had been praised for things like her piano playing and her ability to organize church socials. But this felt different, more real somehow. She was learning skills that could actually help people survive. Gray Eagle began teaching Anna to ride horses. At first she was terrified. The horses were so much bigger and wilder than the gentle farm horses she was used to. But Gray Eagle was a patient teacher, and gradually Anna learned to communicate with the animals. Horse know if you afraid, Gray, Eagle explained as Anna struggled to stay on a particularly spirited mare. You must be calm inside, then horse calm too. It took many falls and bruises, but eventually Anna could ride well enough to join some of the women when they went out to gather plants and berries. These trips showed her how much the tribe knew about living off the land. Every plant, every rock, every change in the weather had meaning and purpose. Anna also learned that the tribe was facing serious problems. White settlers were moving west in greater numbers, and the government was pressuring tribes to move to reservations. Many of the older people were worried about what would happen to their way of life. My grandfather remember when buffalo cover prairie like grass, Gray Eagle told Anna one evening as they watched the sunset. Now white hunters kill so many that herds getting smaller every year. Anna felt guilty, knowing that people like her were responsible for these changes. But she also saw how the tribe was adapting, trying to find ways to survive in a changing world. Some of the younger men had learned to speak English and deal with white traders. Some of the women had started making crafts to sell in nearby settlements. As autumn approached, Anna realized she had been with the tribe for almost 4 months. Her old life seemed like a distant memory. She rarely thought about William anymore, and when she did, it was without the sharp pain she used to feel. The woman who had walked into that storm had been weak and dependent on others. The woman she was becoming was strong and capable. She could ride horses, tan hides, and find edible plants on the prairie. She could speak basic Sioux and had earned the respect of people who had initially seen her as just another helpless white woman. More importantly, she felt like she belonged somewhere for the first time in her life. In her hometown, she had always felt like she was playing a role, the perfect lady, the devoted fiancée, the obedient daughter. Here, she could just be herself. One evening, as Anna sat around the fire with the other women, sewing beads onto a new dress, she realized she was genuinely happy. Not the nervous, anxious happiness she had felt waiting for William, but a deep, peaceful contentment. Gray Eagle caught her eye across the fire and smiled. Anna felt her heart flutter, but this time it wasn't from fear or uncertainty. It was from hope, the kind of hope she thought she would never feel again. Winter was coming to an end when Gray Eagle finally spoke the words Anna had been hoping to hear for months. They were sitting by the creek where he had first found her, watching the ice begin to melt as spring approached. The same spot that had once been a place of despair was now filled with new possibilities. Anna, Gray Eagle said quietly, using her English name instead of the Sioux name the tribe had given her, I want to ask you something important. Anna's heart began to beat faster. Over the past months, their friendship had grown into something deeper. They spent hours together every day, him teaching her about tribal customs, her sharing stories about life in the settlements. but neither had spoken openly about their growing feelings. "My heart has been empty since Morning Star died," Gray Eagle continued, his dark eyes looking directly into hers. "I thought it would always be empty, but you bring light back into dark places." Anna felt tears forming in her eyes, but these were happy tears, not the bitter ones she had cried over William's betrayal. "Gray Eagle, let me finish," he said gently. "I know your people and my people have many problems. I know this life is different from what you knew before. But if you will have me, I want you to be my wife. Not just in white man's way, but in the way of my people with all the tribe as witness." Anna didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I want that more than anything." The preparations for their wedding ceremony took 2 weeks. It was unlike anything Anna had ever imagined. Instead of a church and formal vows, the ceremony would take place at sunset with the whole tribe gathered in a circle. Gentle Rain and the other women spent days preparing. Anna's wedding dress, a beautiful creation of soft white buckskin, decorated with hundreds of tiny beads and patterns that told the story of her journey to the tribe. "Each bead represents part of your spirit," Gentle Rain explained as she worked. "Blue for water that brought you to us, white for storm you survived, red for courage in your heart." The men prepared a feast with the best food they had: buffalo meat, wild turkey, fresh fish from the river, and vegetables they had stored through the winter. Even the children helped, gathering special flowers and preparing songs they would sing during the ceremony. On the day of the wedding, Anna felt nervous but deeply happy. This wasn't the desperate, anxious feeling she had experienced before her failed wedding to William. This was the calm certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right person. As the sun began to set, the tribe gathered in a large circle around the central fire. Gray Eagle stood waiting for Anna, dressed in his finest clothes, a shirt and leggings, decorated with porcupine quills and feathers that had been passed down from his grandfather. Anna walked slowly toward him, accompanied by Gentle Rain and Flying Bird. The whole tribe sang in harmony, their voices rising and falling like the wind across the prairie. When Anna reached Gray Eagle, he took her hands in his and spoke his vows in Sioux, then repeated them in English so she could understand every word. "I promise to protect you and provide for you," he said. "I promise to respect your spirit and honor your courage. I promise to walk beside you through all seasons, in times of plenty and times of hardship." Anna spoke her own vows, mixing English and the Sioux words she had learned. "I promise to stand with you and your people. I promise to learn your ways and honor your traditions. I promise to love you with all my heart as long as I draw breath." The ceremony concluded with the whole tribe welcoming Anna as Gray Eagle's wife and as a full member of their community. They danced around the fire until late into the night, sharing stories and celebrating the union of two hearts that had found each other against all odds. Anna had never felt so completely happy and at peace. This was what marriage was supposed to feel like, not the anxious uncertainty she had felt with William, but a deep sense of partnership and belonging. The first months of their marriage were the happiest time of Anna's life. She and Gray Eagle built their own teepee together, and Anna threw herself into learning everything she needed to know to be a good Sioux wife. She became skilled at tanning hides, making pemmican for long hunting trips, and creating beautiful beadwork, but their happiness was threatened by events happening far beyond their small village. Reports came from other tribes about increasing pressure from the U.S. government. Soldiers were being sent west in greater numbers, and officials were demanding that all Native Americans move to designated reservations. "They want to put us on small pieces of land far from our ancestors' graves," explained Chief Running Bear during a tribal council meeting. "They say we can no longer hunt where our fathers hunted, or follow the buffalo herds as we always have." Anna listened to these discussions with growing alarm. She understood both sides of the conflict better than most people. She knew the white settlers genuinely believed they were bringing civilization and progress to the frontier. But she also understood what the tribe would lose if they were forced to give up their traditional way of life. "What if some of us went to speak with the government officials?" Anna suggested one evening as she and Gray Eagle discussed the situation. I could translate, help them understand that your people aren't savages who need to be controlled. Gray Eagle shook his head sadly. Many have tried this before. White leaders don't want to understand. They want obedience. As summer progressed, the situation grew worse. Soldiers appeared on the edges of their territory, setting up camps and patrolling areas where the tribe had always hunted freely. Some of the younger warriors wanted to fight, but Chief Running Bear counseled patience. If we fight, they will send more soldiers, he warned. Our children and elders will suffer most. Anna found herself in an impossible position. She loved her new family and wanted to protect them, but she also knew that violence would only lead to tragedy. She had heard stories from other settlements about battles between tribes and soldiers, stories that always ended with the Native Americans being defeated and their survivors sent to reservations. The crisis came to a head in late summer. A group of soldiers rode directly into their village while most of the men were away hunting. The officer in charge, a stern man with cold blue eyes, announced that the tribe had 1 month to pack their belongings and report to the reservation. This is not a request, he said as Anna translated his words for the frightened women and children. This is an order from the United States government. Anna felt her heart breaking as she watched the fear and confusion on the faces of people she had come to love like family. Gentle Rain, who had been like a mother to her, looked suddenly old and frail. The children, who had always been so happy and carefree, now clung to their mothers with wide, scared eyes. When Gray Eagle and the other hunters returned and learned what had happened, there was talk of war. Some of the younger men wanted to gather weapons and fight the soldiers. Others argued for fleeing deeper into the wilderness where the government couldn't find them. We cannot run forever, Gray Eagle said during an emergency council meeting. And if we fight, many will die? Our wives, our children, our elders, they will suffer for our pride. Anna knew she had to do something. She couldn't just stand by and watch her adopted family be destroyed. That night she made a decision that would change everything. I'm going to the fort, she told Gray Eagle. I'm going to try to negotiate with the commanding officer. Maybe if they hear from someone who understands both worlds, we can find a solution that doesn't involve bloodshed. Gray Eagle was horrified. Anna, no. If you go back to the white world, you might not be able to return. They might force you. To stay might tell you that you were kidnapped and need to be rescued, but Anna's mind was made up. She had found her courage in that storm 2 years ago, and she would use it now to protect the people she loved. Even if it meant risking everything she had gained, she had to try. The next morning, as Gray Eagle and the rest of the tribe watched with heavy hearts, Anna rode toward the soldiers' fort, carrying with her the hopes and fears of 2 worlds that seemed destined for conflict. The wagon wheels creaked and groaned as they rolled across the frozen ground. Margaret Sullivan pulled her thin woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to stop the bitter wind from cutting through her bones. She looked at her family huddled together in the back of their covered wagon. Her mother, Catherine, held baby Thomas close to her chest, trying to keep him warm. Her father, Patrick, sat with his jaw clenched, staring ahead at the endless wilderness that seemed to stretch forever. It was December 1838, and the Sullivan family had been traveling for 3 months now. They had left their small farm in Virginia with dreams of starting fresh in the Western Territories. Patrick had heard stories of rich soil and endless opportunities waiting for families brave enough to make the journey. But right now, those dreams felt as cold and distant as the stars above them. "Papa, how much farther?" asked little Bridget, Margaret's 8-year-old sister. Her lips were blue from the cold, and her voice came out in small puffs of white vapor. Patrick didn't answer right away. He kept looking ahead, searching for any sign of their guide. 3 days ago, a man named Fletcher had promised to lead them through the mountain passes. He said he knew these lands like the back of his hand. But when morning came, Fletcher was gone. He had taken their money and left them stranded in the middle of nowhere. "We'll find shelter soon," Patrick finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. Margaret could see the worry in her father's eyes. She had never seen him look so uncertain before. The other families in their wagon train were struggling too. The O'Brien family's horse had gone lame 2 days ago, and they were falling behind. Old Mr. Donnelly had developed a terrible cough that seemed to get worse every hour. His wife Mary kept giving him sips of whiskey, but it wasn't helping much. Margaret climbed down from the wagon and walked alongside it to warm her feet. The ground was so frozen that each step felt like walking on stones. She could see her breath forming little clouds in front of her face. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her that they had eaten only a small piece of dried bread that morning. Their food supplies were running dangerously low. "Margaret, get back in the wagon," her mother called. "You'll catch your death out." But Margaret needed to move. Sitting still made her think too much about their situation. She looked around at the other families and felt a heavy weight in her chest. Everyone looked tired and scared. The children weren't laughing and playing like they did when the journey started. Now they just sat quietly, trying to stay warmed out. As the day wore on, the wind picked up strength. It howled through the bare trees like some wild animal. Snow began to fall, not the gentle kind that makes everything look pretty, but hard, stinging. Flakes that felt like tiny needles against their faces. "We need to stop and make camp," Patrick announced to the other men. "This storm is getting worse." They found a small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. It wasn't much protection, but it was better than being completely in the open. The men worked together to set up a circle of wagons while the women gathered what little firewood they could find. Margaret helped her mother prepare their evening meal, which was nothing more than thin soup made from the last of their vegetables, and a small piece of salt pork. As they ate, the wind outside grew stronger. It shook their wagon so hard that baby Thomas started crying. "Mama, I'm scared," Bridget whispered, crawling closer to her mother. Catherine wrapped her arms around her daughter. "It's just wind, sweetheart. It can't hurt us." But Margaret wasn't so sure. She had never experienced a storm like this before. The wind sounded angry, like it was trying to tear their wagon apart. Snow was beginning to pile up around them, and she could feel the temperature dropping even more. That night, nobody slept well. The storm raged on, and by morning they woke up to find their wagon half buried in snow. When Margaret pushed open the canvas flap, she gasped. The world outside looked completely different. Everything was white as far as she could see. "Good Lord," her father muttered, climbing out to assess their situation. The other men gathered around, their faces grim. Some of the wagons were completely buried. The horses were huddled together, shivering and barely able to stand. "We can't move in this," said Mr. O'Brien, his voice shaky. "The wheels will never turn in snow this deep." For the next 3 days they remained trapped in that clearing. The storm continued to rage, bringing more snow and bitter cold. Their food supplies dwindled to almost nothing. Margaret watched her little brother Thomas grow weaker. He had stopped crying, which somehow was worse than when he was fussing. Her mother tried to keep nursing him, but she wasn't eating enough herself to produce much milk. Margaret gave her own small portions to Catherine, but it wasn't enough. None of it was enough. On the 4th night, old Mr. Donnelly didn't wake up. His wife found him cold and still in the morning. Mary Donnelly just sat there, holding his hand, not saying a word. The men had to dig a shallow grave in the frozen ground, and they said a few prayers before covering him with stones to keep the animals away. That's when Margaret truly understood how desperate their situation had become. They weren't just uncomfortable or inconvenienced, they were dying. "We have to do something," Patrick said to the other men that evening. "We can't just sit here and wait." "But where can we go?" asked Mr. O'Brien. "We don't know these lands. We could walk right off a cliff in this snow." As they talked, Margaret noticed something that made her blood run cold. There were tracks in the snow around their camp, large paw prints that definitely didn't belong to any dog. She had heard wolves howling in the distance for the past 2 nights, but now it looked like they were getting closer. She pointed out the tracks to her father, who studied them with growing concern. "Keep the children close," he whispered to the other adults. and keep the fire burning bright. But their firewood was running out too. They had burned through most of what they could find, and the snow was too deep to search for more. Margaret watched the flames grow smaller and felt panic rising in her chest. On the fifth night, the howling got closer. Much closer. Margaret was trying to help keep baby Thomas warm when she heard it. A long, mournful sound that seemed to come from right outside their circle of wagons. Then another howl answered it from the opposite direction, and another. "They're surrounding us," her father said quietly. Reaching for his rifle, the other men grabbed their weapons too, but Margaret could see their hands shaking. Whether from cold or fear, she couldn't tell. Maybe both. The howling continued through the night, sometimes close, sometimes distant, but never stopping completely. Margaret held her rosary beads, the ones her grandmother had given her back in Ireland. She prayed harder than she had ever prayed in her life. As dawn approached, the sounds grew quiet. Margaret almost allowed herself to hope that the wolves had moved on. But then she saw the eyes. Yellow eyes reflecting the dying embers of their fire, watching them from the darkness between the trees. Her father raised his rifle, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely aim. The cold had weakened all of them. Margaret wasn't sure any of the men had the strength left to fight. The wolves began to move closer, and Margaret closed her eyes, clutching her rosary tighter. She thought about her grandmother's stories of angels watching over good people. She hoped those angels were real, because right now they needed a miracle.